Hey everyone, welcome back to the Infatuasian podcast. This is a show where we try to elevate and celebrate Asian culture and creators. We have a fun chat today with fellow podcaster Randy Kim. Randy is a queer Viet-Khmer podcaster out of the Chicagoland area, and we've been communicating on Instagram for a few years now, but we've never sat down and chatted, so it was a good time to get together and have a little conversation about podcasting as well as just life and things like that. So I hope you enjoy this episode with Randy, which we'll get to right after this. Welcome to the show, Randy.
Welcome, and thank you so much for bringing me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been Instagram friends for a little while.
Yeah, I feel like I have always seen you like in my feed, and we had never really interacted personally until like maybe the last few months since I got back on the podcast.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. So yeah, it's good to chat. Randy is a podcaster out of Chicago. Are you calling in from Chicago area today?
I'm calling in from the Chicagoland area, yes.
All right, that's a big area. Yeah, how far out does it go? Like when you say Chicagoland, 10, 15 miles outside of the city still?
I think you're about right. It depends. It depends where you're looking at it. I mean, I'm 20 minutes away from O'Hare. I'd say I'm like 30 minutes into the city without traffic. So I think your estimation is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's the weather today? You guys, I've only been to Illinois once in the winter. It's not great.
No, and it holds very true right now. We are going to experience a very deep freeze.
Oh, that's right.
Tonight, for the next into the weekend. So it is January 22nd, and I am a person that could still go outside for a little bit, but this reaches my limit because for myself, I love to be outside. I have to be outside because I hate getting cabin fever.
Yeah.
But I kind of have to stay put, and I'm not very happy about that.
You gotta layer up.
I know.
All right. Well, besides this time of year, Chicago's on my list to visit one of these days. Can you help me move Chicago up my list in terms of why should I visit Chicago? Maybe not in January, but why should I visit Chicago?
I will say this: when the weather is very warm in the summer, what you will notice about Chicagoans is that you don't see them take a day for granted. Like everyone is out and about.
Yeah.
If you go in Lake Michigan, everyone's riding their bikes, playing volleyball. I mean, everyone's going hard. I mean, like we do have very good summers. We do have street festivals and neighborhood festivals that are pretty random. I will say that we do have a good collection of good restaurants, both from a mom and pop standpoint, but also from a fine dining.
Yeah.
I think the architecture, the casualness. If you are from the East Coast, Chicago feels like a breeze because it's not as intense. I do think that Chicago, as big of a city as it is, it does have a very laid back Midwest vibe to it to some level. I think it is a lovely city. I think it's got a lot of great culture and history and civic engagement. So yeah, I mean, I can go on about how wonderful the city is, but yeah, you go during the summertime, I don't think you'll have a boring moment.
Okay. All right. I think you got me. I'll get there for sure. I mean, it's one of the cities in America that I think we should all see it once in our life.
Absolutely.
At least, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've also been coming to San Francisco a few times, so
Yeah.
now it's your turn.
Okay. All right. That's fair. All right. Well, we dig into our guest roots a little bit. And on your bio, it says you're a queer Viet-Khmer American from the Chicagoland area. There's a lot going on there. So let's unpack that a little bit. Viet-Khmer, do you say Khmer or Khmer?
Khmer.
Khmer.
Yeah.
Okay. So what side is which?
Khmer is Cambodian, short for Cambodian, but in our community, we tend to use Khmer, but Cambodian is very universal, so it tends to
Okay.
be a more of a recognizable term. But um, my mom's side of the family is Vietnamese. They're from the southern part. Their hometown is like right by the border of Cambodia in a place called Ha Tinh.
Uh,
And my dad's side of the family, they are ethnically Cambodian. The majority of them live actually like not terribly far from my mom's village. They live in the Anyang province, and that's like below the Mekong. So, essentially like we're Mekong people. Um, but on uh, my dad's side is also like besides being ethnically Cambodian, I also had relatives in Cambodia as
mhm.
well. But a lot of them, I believe, were gone due to the genocide. So my parents came to the U.S. like separately, and
Oh.
actually they had never met until they came to America. It was my dad that came to America first in '76 after the genocide, and then for
Mhm.
my mom's family, they escaped by boat into Kuala Lumpur, where they stayed
Mm.
in a refugee camp for a few years before coming to America in the late '70s, early '80s, I believe, and I was the first one born in the United States, so
Mm.
it's a very interesting experience to be born in the U.S. on to be the firstborn on both sides of my family in the US,
Mhm.
but also the fact that I was a product of the trauma that they had to escape from. So it's something that I do carry with me from time to time, and it's something that that I'm learning to reconcile with that part of the history and also how my becoming began.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that generation, I respect it so much. I'm a parent myself now, and just thinking about what it would be like you weren't born yet, but there's so many families who came over with babies or small children or multiple children through refugee camps for years. I can't imagine that experience, let alone surviving genocide
Mhm.
and civil war. Like, there's so much that your parents' generation, well, it's technically my generation. I was born in the '70s too, so it'd be like my generation as kids, but then your parents' generation, they were in their 20s when the war happened, or?
Yes, my dad was about 23 years old when he came
Mm,
to the US. My mom is like a few years younger, so she came in, I'm gonna say I think in '78, 22 years old
mhm.
at least 22, 23 years old. So roughly the same age, but different year.
Yeah, okay. So growing up, did they talk about that experience, or is it kinda something you just don't talk about?
My mom can be open about it though, but I mean, from time to time, she'll bring it up. I think that she can be very candid about it.
Mhm.
But when it comes to my dad, I think it is a source of pain for him.
Yeah.
He does talk about it, but it triggers him. Like I think what I could say is that he does have PTSD from it.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
had mental health issues over the years, and when you get him to talk about that particular era of what happened on the day of Phnom Penh, the capital of Cambodia, being captured by the Khmer Rouge, and he would retell every detail about what had happened on that day where he was at and how you know the Khmer Rouge was targeting him as well because he had worked I believe as a translator for the US embassy at the time. So of course
Oh,
that was also grounds for execution which was
right.
happening. So
Yeah.
yeah, there were times when he, in a shorter way of saying it, that he had 9 lives and he probably used up 8 lives
Oh,
because there was
yeah.
many times that he could have been killed. And I always
Yeah.
wonder, you know, like the fact that he miraculously survived, I'm always like thinking, man, if he had just given up or had just fallen into it, yeah, my existence would have disappeared. It would not have happened.
Yeah.
So I do think about his tenacity or like what it took, but in the end, as I would learn, it would cost them mentally, over the
Yeah.
years, and
Sure.
it's something that I do think, like, he could talk about, but it's like when you open a box, how do you close it? And that's
Yeah.
kinda where my struggle is with him sometimes on that topic.
Yeah. Yeah. So you guys ended up in the Chicago area, Chicagoland area. So is your neighborhood where you grew up diverse at all, or were you one of one? Or
You know, it was it was predominantly, a white working class, community. Um, I was probably one of the very few Asian students, definitely the only Vietnamese, definitely the only Khmer student in my school. So I stood out quite a bit
mm,
among my classmates, also because I was very tall too compared to my classmates. So that didn't help either. And I was incredibly shy. I was terrified to be around other kids.
mm,
And I did not know what was going on around me. Like my parents just kind of threw me into the fire, I guess, so to speak. And I'm I didn't feel like I had the kind of guidance, and thankfully my teachers were, incredibly loving and really kind of took me in a sense to kind of protect me. And I know that they had to do overtime with me because I would start crying if a student came up to me, and
oh,
I was very scared all the time. And
mm,
because I think as I grew up, or as I look back on it, I didn't see anyone that looked like me that I related to, and they were speaking English. I wasn't quite speaking English, so it was a
oh,
it was a very jolting experience.
hmm. Was it more in your head, or was it actual bullying? Like, did you feel scared, like physically, or
Yeah, I was very scared. I felt very scared because I did not know what to do. I
uh,
did not know how to respond, and I don't know what the kids were doing. So everything just kind of felt like, well, what am I doing? Do I know what I'm getting myself into?
mm,
So I felt very sheltered in a sense growing up because
mm,
I didn't really grow up with any kids around me
uh,
during that time. So
yeah,
that was a bit of a challenge.
yeah. Have you ever heard the term weekend Asian?
No, I have not.
Well, some people say that some people are like, if especially if you're in the Midwest or somewhere, they call yourself weekend Asian, meaning like during the week you're around mostly people not Asian, but then maybe you go to Chinese school
Uh
on
huh.
Saturday or Korean church on Sunday, and you
Mm.
feel like you're Asian on the weekends, but during school you're not.
Oh, that's funny. I have not heard that term, but it
It's a good
definitely
term
makes
though,
sense.
right?
Yeah, it's quite a. It's definitely like I didn't go to church. I didn't have like the Saturdays, but what we would do as a family, we would go to the Chicago Uptown area called the Asia and Argyle neighborhood, and this is kind of where like there's the Vietnamese restaurants and the grocery stores, and so this is where they will get their food and socialize with their friends or run into their buddies. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so it was a place that where we got our food, but it was a place where my parents' folks would meet up or like run
Yeah.
into each other and have like an
Yeah.
hour-long conversation. And yeah, it was a small
Yeah.
bustling neighborhood. I mean, it still exists, and it's a community
Yeah.
community that I still have a bleeding heart for. So
Mm.
yeah, that was my gateway to the community. That was my gateway to the Vietnamese access and even the Cambodian access because there were only a few stores around there too.
Mm. Now, I've seen you volunteer or you're on the board for different groups, and some of them are Khmer and some of them are Vietnamese. Do you feel stronger with one culture or the other?
Um, I don't particularly, to be honest with you. I will say that I have been trying to tap more into the Vietnamese side of my work because for years I have been part of the Cambodian Museum in Chicago on their board, and so I had a lot of access to different folks in the community on a national level. With the Vietnamese community, it was still kind of fairly new to me. Like I had not um, been active within the Chicagoland community when it comes to the Vietnamese side of things. I will say I have been learning to practice my Vietnamese the past several months. Um, and I feel like I'm getting to a beginner, maybe intermediate level now.
Hmm.
Um, and like I wish I could also learn Khmer, but the reason why I chose not to at this time is because Khmer is another set of just another set of barriers because you got to learn the Sanskrit. You got to learn
Yeah.
um, to be able to speak to other folks that can do Khmer, but the
Yeah.
population of the Cambodia diaspora is much smaller than the
Right.
Vietnamese. And then
Yeah.
also, I need to talk to someone that could also read and write. And a lot of the
Mhm.
folks in Cambodian diaspora, unfortunately, do not have those skills
Mm.
versus where there's a lot of Vietnamese folks in the diaspora that can at least read or
Yeah.
text. And I feel like there's more opportunities for me to use that. So
Uh,
I did it from a more practical side of things, even though, yes, it I don't want to feel like I'm abandoning one part of myself to another. And I think the best way someone had asked me many years ago, uh, and she asked me, "Do you feel more Vietnamese or do you feel more Khmer?" And I said, "Well, I remember what Grace Jones said when she was asked about, do you love men or do you love women?" And she said that if I didn't love either of them, or if I picked one or the other, I wouldn't be loving myself. And that's how
uh,
I kind of viewed my identities is that I don't go in thinking I feel 50% Cambodian, 20%
yeah.
Vietnamese. I go in feeling I'm 100% Cambodian, 100% Vietnamese, 100% American, and 100% queer. So I think that's
Yeah.
the level of abundance that I try to go with rather than from a place of deficit.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm starting to see the pieces fall together for your podcast. Like, I think, all these experiences and all these identities kinda came together. When did the idea for the podcast come about, and when did it actually come about?
Yeah. So the original story was like in 2016, since everyone's doing their 2016 recaps, it's
Okay,
like a
yeah.
trend now. And yeah, I went to a banh mi shop called Nulan in the Chicago area, and I was ordering a banh mi, and I was just sitting down, just eating, and I was like, I would love to have like my next book called the Banh Mi Chronicles. It was just clicked, and obviously the book never started, but 3 years later, this would be the genesis of my starting my podcast. And in early 2019, I had been doing storytelling events and
Mm,
live storytelling events. I
mhm,
had been a guest on, I think, two or three other podcasts. One was called the Gay Asian Club, which is now the Queer Asian Social Club, run by Maya Reddy. And then there was the Vietnamese Boat People podcast run by Tracy Win Mang. And then I think there was self. Um, I know James is going to kill me if self evident. I know James is going to kill me if I forgot that if I forgot his podcast. But those three, I felt being a guest on their show, I was like, wow, this is a really cool experience, and I feel like there's so much to share and discuss. And so when I was in the storytelling scene in Chicago, it was predominantly very white. And
yeah.
in a lot of the storytelling shows, it was, I'm not gonna lie to you, it was very challenging to be in those spaces because I always felt like I was the
Mm,
only person of color, only Asian person. And I tend to do more stories that have a level of trauma in there
mm,
and
mhm,
a lot of introspection in my work. And then there are folks that are wannabe white folks that are wannabe comedians and trying to tell funny stories, and here I am telling the most vulnerable story, and it just
yeah.
it never quite hit with me, and with the audience too, which is also predominantly white. So I
Mhm,
would always feel very ick you
yeah,
know, about after each show. I'm like, there's something that's not clicking. And then my my former mentor basically urged me to start my own project, and I think that's kind of where I felt like, maybe I should try this podcast thing. I think that there's a lot for me to talk about. I had already been in the nonprofit circle. I know a lot of good Asian American folks in Chicago doing a lot of community organizing.
mhm,
So let's bring those stories out. And so that's kind of where the Banh Mi Chronicles began for me. And the name Banh Mi Chronicles was when I was thinking about that name, it was the idea of breaking bread. It's breaking banh mi, which
Yeah.
banh mi means bread in Vietnamese. And also, banh mi was like the first Vietnamese food that I felt I could feel comfortable eating. Because when you're in a predominantly white community, like like pho and um, Vietnamese noodles and other kinds of food were very foreign to them. And so
Yeah.
I've always felt this kind of shame and this embarrassment of not wanting
Yeah.
to, be associated with my family culture. But the banh mi felt more palatable because it felt very Western looking. And yeah, it was also influenced by the colonization of France. And
Mhm.
so that kind of like, in a way, it's kinda like a metaphor for assimilation and
Yeah.
melding in, like, all these different identities and having to try to find a way to be unique through those lens, I guess. So that was kinda
Yeah.
how I kinda saw the Bun Me Chronicles as a journey about having to understand the assimilation trauma and also what do we do with that history, and also being able to have, like, meaningful dialogue and conversations with other folks who are on similar journeys or on, perhaps a different journey.
I think I look back around 2019 was the beginning of posting,
Yes, yes.
and so are you over 100 episodes now? Are
Oh,
you?
yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, funny enough, like, when I resumed back my podcasts, back in August, I think I had when I ended my podcast in 2023, I think I had maybe 110 officially. I think at least 100 for sure. But
Uh-huh.
then when I came back, I did 30 episodes in 2 months, and a lot of it was on the ice coverage. So I was doing emergency
Uh,
episodes after episodes, and I was going
wow.
nonstop for a good 2
Yeah.
months. So,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I when I came back, I thought I was just gonna do maybe 10 episodes from August to the end of the year. Okay, this is kinda where I'm looking at, but then ice raids were happening in Chicago, and I felt compelled to double down and start
Hmm.
talking to community leaders and folks and having these conversations, and yeah, I think it was also my way of keeping sane because if I didn't
Yeah.
do that, what would I be doing? I don't wanna feel helpless as it is,
Yeah.
and seeing my
Yeah.
city being invaded, what we're seeing in Minneapolis. So, I felt a moral duty to do that, and yes, it's hard to believe I did 30 episodes. I will
Yeah.
sue the government and get reparations for the time that I had to spend doing these episodes, and I hope that, more community members can get their
Yeah.
reparations from this
Oh,
after it's all
man.
said and done.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And just kinda scattered shot look through your inventory. It seems like mostly interviews. Do you ever do solos?
I have done a few solos, more recently since I came back. I hope to do more of them. It would be great. If I'm not doing a solo episode, it would be through my TikTok or through my Instagram instead.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like a vlog or something.
yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah, like, and sometimes when I do these, if I do a solo episode, it's very random. Sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe I should just stick it. Maybe this should actually go into a podcast rather than a
Mm.
TikTok instead. So sometimes it's
Yeah.
very random.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, but most of them are interviews.
Yeah, I don't love the solo. I mean, it's definitely easier, you don't have to arrange anything, just get on the mic.
Yeah.
But I like interviewing too.
hmm
What is it about interviewing that you like so much?
I love, I think what I love about interviewing is being able to hear the stories from different creators, activists,
Mhm.
educators, and learning the genesis of their work. Uh, Learning their life story in a very short span, which is very hard to do, but I think getting the more human side to their work and where this work comes into play. Where How does this inspire their art? How does this inspire their movement work? So I'm always very interested in the why of their work. And I think the idea of being able to share the blueprint to younger folks has always been
Yeah.
very enticing. I have said, when I've gone to universities to talk about my podcast, I would say, I wanted to do a podcast where I feel like my 10-year-old self, 15-year-old self, 20-year-old self would have wanted to learn about
Yeah.
the work of so many important Asian American and other BIPOC voices. So I
Yeah.
felt that this is what I needed. And had I gotten that early on, who knows what that would have
Mhm.
done for me now.
I
But
know. Yeah.
but yeah, I hope that that would be the situation for a lot of folks where they don't have to wonder about, the
Yeah.
history. So
Yeah, I think I think we're like the same person, Randy. A little bit like I mean, that was my dream too, is just I grew up I'm older than you, so I grew up in the 70s and 80s. It was even more bleak, there's
Mhm.
nothing.
Mhm.
Bruce Lee and that was it,
Yeah.
and it just for my own kids, but for whoever's out there listening, just to hear these stories and voices. Some people are more famous than others, but
Mhm.
it doesn't matter, right? You're just getting stories out
Mhm.
there, and it's just hopefully some sort of a permanent record that we exist and that
Mhm.
we're here. We're not a monolith, we're just there's so many different stories.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it on the nail. I want this to be a historical documentation of the work that we're doing because when we don't know our history, um, it's detrimental to us.
Yeah,
And learning our history gives us this empowerment, this blueprint of what we need to do to confront the barriers that we still have to deal with.
yeah. We were just on a thread together about someone was asking for Khmer or Southeast Asian
Hmm.
podcasts, and it's kind of slim pickings out there. And
It
so,
is.
I mean, I think the same five come up most of the time, and you're one of them. So, do you feel like you're a little bit on an island? Like your voice?
At times, even like back then and even now, I think coming back, it's like there's some people that have exited out of the podcast before I sunsetted it
Mm,
originally. And then when I came back, I was like, who's really still doing it? I know that there's Kamai Voices that started recently. There is Death in Cambodia, which had
yeah,
started the last few years, and the Vietnamese podcast hosted by Kenneth Nguyen, who's a dear friend of mine, and he's been going at it for such a long time already. And yeah, and I don't want to feel like I'm missing other people too, but
do you know Mei Lee Tao? Have you ever listened to her?
yes, I do know
She's
Meili Tao.
great.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, she's another one too. But it's so yes, like I always I don't want to be like Nicki Minaj when it comes to like gatekeeping the
Hmm.
podcast where I do feel like we need more voices because I don't want to feel
Yeah.
like I'm responsible for carrying the whole
Yeah.
diaspora of our
Right.
communities and their stories, because
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much to share, there's so much people to talk to, and I would say that my show is not specifically Vietnamese and Cambodian. Like I interview a lot of
Yeah.
different folks, so
Sure.
I don't want to feel like I'm being responsible for holding the entire diaspora of my communities, but I do feel like we need more of those voices. And if it's not on podcasts, I hope it's on TikTok. I hope it's on Substack. I hope it's on different platforms where it's
Hmm.
accessible to the community.
You gotta like if for my audience out there who might not be familiar with your podcast, you got a gateway episode for them or two that you're particularly proud of?
Ooh, I had to think about that for a moment because there's a lot of podcast episodes that I really enjoyed, and sometimes I have a hard time re-listening to them after like maybe two or three times. I'm like, okay, this
Yeah.
is like
Sure.
way back in the uh, pull box. I will say that um, maybe there's one episode in particular that stood out, and this was in the summer of 2020. And there's a singer named Milk. Her name goes by Milck, otherwise known as Connie
Mm,
Lim. She had a song that went viral during the Women's March in 2017 called "I Can't Keep Quiet." And I remembered how powerful that song was, and she,
Mm,
like, really stood out, and she has been a survivor of sexual assault. She had done that song that, um to lift her own experiences with it and how she had to work and navigate through that trauma. And we had talked about what was going on with the anti-Asian hate and what was going on with George Floyd. And it was a really beautiful interview. Actually, I had wrote to her like maybe months before the episode aired, and she didn't reply back to me until I think it was done with my 3rd season. And she messaged me out of the blue saying that, "Yeah, I would love to still be on your show. I'm very sorry about it." And, she had such a loving way of responding. And I said, "Well, you know what? I'm happy to add you into third. I've been
yeah.
wanting to have this conversation with you." And I'm glad we did. And and she enjoyed the conversation to the point where she decided that she wanted to play a new song for me. And
Mm,
it was a brand new song in response to the Breonna Taylor murder.
uh,
And I was actually very nervous because I was like, I'm still new to the technology of podcasting. Like, will the music be able to be captured in this audio? So part of me was like, this is really awesome. And then the other part of me was like absolutely petrified that this was
eh,
not going to get captured properly. And I'm like, I don't know what
yeah,
to do with
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Um, but luckily, it turned out very well. And this is usually
yeah,
the episode I reference to when I talk to students or when I talk to other
yeah.
folks. But that episode stood out for me. And then I think the second one probably would have to be um, my interview with former ABC 7 newscaster Linda Yu, who had been a longtime Chicago newscaster for decades.
Mm,
And she's now in her late 70s, but when I grew up, she was the face of the evening
yeah,
news. And if you
yeah.
know how media works back in the day, like if there's always a couple of news anchors that you're always going to recognize, that they're
Mhm,
always going that you're going to recognize their voice, you're going to recognize their
yeah,
names, you're going to know what channel they're on. Um,
yeah.
and so my dad was a huge fan of Linda Yu. Like, when I wanted to go into journalism, it was because of her, and also
Mm,
because it was the only way I could get my dad to begrudgingly accept that I wanted to go into journalism at the time. So,
mhm,
because he had that respect for Linda, and she had retired for several years, and, she kinda disappeared for a while, and then actually I was on a radio show, and she had brought up Linda Yu. It's like, "You should talk to Linda," and I'm like, and I was like, "Wow, you read my mind," because I have been wanting to know where she's been, and I've always wanted to have a conversation with her. So she hooked me up with Linda, and we talked, and it was a full circle moment. It was a very full
yeah,
circle moment to talk to someone that you watched as a kid to now, being
yeah,
a full blown adult. And yeah, it's
yeah,
it's kind of wild to see how that manifested.
yeah. No, I love that too. If I can talk to someone who was an icon in the '70s
Hmm.
or '80s, I'm 100% gonna do it,
Hmm.
it's so great.
Hmm.
And, um, and yeah, I agree with you. I think one of our problems, Randy, I think, is that we are too curious and we like too many different things
Hmm.
that our episodes are all over the
Yep.
place.
Not good for the algorithms,
Yeah, not great for the algorithm. Like, I
which is
just
fine.
poked around on your feed and I saw, you have someone to talk about sports,
Hmm.
then you're talking about, queerness, and then you're talking about food, it's like all
Yes.
different.
Yeah, I'm all
So,
and even my Instagram content's all over the place too. It's like, is it a political one? Is it a food one? Is it a travel one? Is it a concert one? So it's like
yeah,
I could do 10 different accounts and I'm not gonna do that. I
yeah.
don't take the internet that seriously. Like I just it's like I'm a full package deal. You take it for what it
Yeah.
is. But yeah, I mean I think the algorithms like really like ruins the whole game of it. But yeah, like I think you're
Oh,
right. But
well.
like even my own episodes, it feels like it goes into different directions. And when I think, John Hill, I know he was a guest on your show, but I had wanted to talk sports with him because that's a topic that I never talk about in my episodes.
Yeah.
And people don't know that I'm actually a big sports fan. Like everyone knows me as a
Yeah.
concert going diva-loving person that I am, but no one knew how big of a Chicago Bulls fan, a Chicago Bears fan I can be, how much of a nerd with uh, sports talk radio I
Yeah.
am. So, yeah, so it was great to finally have a conversation, and John was great for it, and I was very proud of myself for being able to, like, flex my muscle on
Your
it.
sports muscle, yeah. Nah, that's cool. So everyone out there, yeah, go find Banh Mi Chronicles wherever you get podcasts. There's also a Substack, Banh Mi Bites. Is
Mhm,
that right? And I'll put all the details in the show notes at the end here. But we want to talk about something a little more deep.
mhm,
When we were scheduling this, I'm good on Thursdays, and you said, well, any Thursday except for January
mhm,
15th,
mhm, mhm.
and you said it's because that's when your baby brother passed away.
Yeah, yeah, he passed away a year ago on January 15th,
Mm,
and, he had the last several months, he had fallen very quickly to kidney failure. I mean,
oh no.
I think when I found out about his diagnosis, this was in June 2024, like right before my birthday. And,
Uh,
I had heard rumblings because he had lived in Florida. And so I had heard rumblings from some of my relatives there that there's something going on with him. And then I called him one day and I was at a parking lot, at a Amazon store parking lot. And I talked to him about it and I was like, "So, what's going on with your health?" And he said, "Well," he told me it's not good, and he said that he needs a
mm,
kidney transplant. And I was so, like, shocked in a sense, like, I couldn't handle the news, and I think the first thing I said was, "Well, you're supposed to outlive our mom,"
I
and then
know.
I also
Yeah.
said, "Well, you're supposed to outlive me," So, and I think he got very defensive when I said that, but that was the first thing that came to my mind, and so, I had visited him a month later with my family, and you know, and then next thing you know, he was in the hospital for weeks on end, and he was having heart issues. Like, he was a person that did not take care of himself. Very defiant, very stubborn, which made things very hard for my relatives who were kind of watching over him in Florida, and for myself and his twin brother, and my parents. So we were all very concerned about what was happening, and I think, uh, like when before I went to Vietnam and Cambodia, like during the holidays, I was thinking about postponing that trip because I thought that things were, getting so bad to the point that, like, is he gonna make it to the end of the year? And I had, um, um, already thought about, like, I don't want to be in Vietnam and Cambodia while this is happening. Like, I don't wanna have to be thousands of miles away. And my brother had called me and said, you should not cancel your trip. I need you to go on with the trip." And I said, "Well, you also have to promise me that you'll still be there, when I'm done,
Mhm, mhm,
when it's all said and done," and
yeah.
he was still in the hospital like the entire part of the holidays. He was in the hospital during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's. And he had gotten out of the hospital, and you know, I and he seemed very happy. He was on Facebook. He said that he sounded very happy to finally be back home, and he wanted to get back to his life. But we also kind of knew that he was going to get back into his old habits with,
Mm,
really bad eating and not taking care of himself. And so that was a concern for a lot of us. And then, you know, I think I had my last conversation with him a couple of days before he passed. And it's still something that I have a hard time talking about, but I will say that, um, it kind of it kind of like led me on to this day, this path of like, okay, I gotta start taking care of myself, and that was what he kind of insinuated. And
mm,
so, yeah, I mean, when I look back on it, a year feels unfair, like that has snuck up on me the way that it did.
mm,
Before, like, when I was, like, preparing to schedule this interview, um, I knew that I needed to get January 15th off limits, and I knew that the holidays were coming. I also knew that in January is the anniversary. Then there's the Lunar New Year, and then there's my
Yeah.
brother's, the twins' birthday, which is on February 15th, 1 month
Oh,
after.
wow.
So I knew that this whole winter was going to be a drag, to say the least. So I went to Colombia like in the middle, like right after the holidays. I kind of felt like I needed
Yeah.
something in the middle to break this whole dread of first of things.
Mm,
So yeah, I think when I look back on it, I mean, yeah, it's a very visceral timeline of how things rapidly
yeah.
moved forward since, and it feels like I'm still holding tightly to that time. But yeah, I think uh, with with Andy, I felt that as the days were leading up to the 15th, it was very heavy. It was on January 8th, and I was ready to leave Colombia. I was at the Cartagena airport, and then all of a sudden, I just get this notification that, oh yeah, this was the last time I talked to my brother a year ago on that day. And my brother loved going on airplanes. He loved flying. He loved airport. Like he was a nerd with airports. Like he would tell me every little detail. I would fight with him. He always hated San Francisco airport. I argued that you're full of it because how can you say that you hate it more than LAX? I think that's very blasphemous and utterly ridiculous. So I would have these fights, these passionate fights about our airports. But then, like, all of a sudden, when I was waiting in the airport, I mean, it was very crowded. I was in a waiting area and I just started sobbing, for the next
mm,
hour or so. And I was like, gosh, this is this is the feeling that I'm getting, and this is something I'm dreading back because I know that this is going to confront me. And I think on the 15th, I hung out with my brother, and I think it was a peaceful day. Um, I think it was better than I thought, only because
hmm
at least I felt like I was in good company, and I felt like I had to get through the anticipation, and I think the anticipation was worse than the day itself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's how it
Mhm,
is. Man, too quick, too
mhm,
young.
yeah,
All right. Rest in peace, Andy.
thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to end our interview with a Yao. Yao stands for Your Asian Opinion. All right. Best place to get Asian food in Chicago.
Whew, um, I am gonna say I love Pho 777. That's a
Mm,
place that I really enjoy. It's in the Asian Argyle neighborhood.
it's a great name. It's easy to
Yes,
remember.
yes, it is. There's a Pho 888, also pretty good too. Like that. No 999s or no 666.
Yeah, right. You don't
Um,
want to do that.
nope, not at all. But I would have to go with that one. If in the suburbs, I have to say Pho-licious is pretty solid. Their banh mi's
Felicia.
is great. Yes.
I like a good pun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Felicious. Okay. Good Rex there. Um, what's your if you go to a banh mi shop, what's your go-to order?
I go with the typical banh mi duck beak, which is the special. It has like the ham, the cold cut ham, the pate, which
Uh-huh.
is a give or take. Um, I have it with the jalapenos and the
Uh-huh.
cucumbers and the whole works. Basically, even the cilantro, which is fine. I mean, there are people that absolutely despise it. I understand,
Yeah.
but yeah, I have the whole works, so that's usually my
Yeah.
go-to.
I go with the sumai, the meatball. I like
Mm.
the little roast pork one.
Oh,
That one's
okay.
good.
Sometimes I'll do the roasted pork, with the skin.
Yeah.
That sometimes I will do that. Yeah.
That one's good too. All right. If you could have dinner with an AAPI icon, living or
Mm,
deceased, one meal, maybe somewhere fancy. Where
mm.
would you go? Well, who would you go with? Who would you go with? Your API icon.
Um, I would say for one for living and one for deceased. Yuri Kochiyama would be a
Yeah.
person that I
Yeah.
have a ton of respect for. I mean, this is a
Uh-huh.
person who um had been very visible in the API movements, but also participating in movements for Black people, for
Civil rights.
independence
Yeah.
and indigenous rights. And so she's a person
Yeah.
that I have a profound respect for. And I was very lucky enough to interview her granddaughter, Akemi, a few
Oh,
years
oh
ago, and
wow.
that was a it was a fun experience.
Yeah.
Living, I'd always would love to have a conversation with Yo-Yo Ma.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I saw Yo-Yo Ma perform at, Ascend High School, which is a CPS, public school, and
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, it was such a great experience. My friend invited me to it, and,
Mm-hmm.
he was so lovely, very passionate about his music, his craft, and
Yeah.
when there were students asking him questions, my gosh, he was so, like,
Yeah.
bubbly and very excited to talk to these students, and so, yeah,
And down to
very
earth.
down to
Yeah.
earth, and I've always wanted to interview him,
Yeah.
so I have to say Yo-Yo Ma.
Yeah, no, I can't shake the image of when COVID vaccine first came
Mhm,
out and there was huge lines
mhm.
in New York City. He went out in the street, as people were lined up out in the street and performed for people while they're in line
Wow.
to get the vaccine. It was freezing cold, like it was like February
My
in New York
gosh.
City.
My gosh.
But yeah, okay, we'll manifest that he'll come on both our
I
shows.
hope so too.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, Yo-Yo
Mm,
Ma, come on our show
yes.
if you're listening. Yeah, that's a good one. But okay, you could overlap here if you want to. We ask our guests to choose an infatuation. It could be Yo-Yo Ma if you want, but
Mhm.
infatuation is anyone in the AAPI community that you admire, could be living or deceased. So, Randy Kim,
Mm,
who's your infatuation?
God, this is gonna be a really hard
I know.
question
Yeah, there's too many.
because I already had those 2, and that's a tough one to line up towards. I have been very I have been very grateful to have, Viet Thanh on my podcast, like,
Mm,
twice, and when I started out my podcast and if, like, maybe a few months into it, um, he was willing to be on my show, and
yeah.
what I like about Viet Thanh is that he was willing to uplift a lot of Southeast Asian, specifically Vietnamese writers, creatives, and he took
Hmm.
a chance on me, knowing that I was only a few months in. I did not have like any kind of visibility, and so I think
Yeah.
for him to say yes to it when obviously he was on Seth Meyers, he was on far more prolific shows and done more prolific work. Yeah, I think it really speaks to his integrity. I've always
Hmm.
admired his willingness um, to be, um, to be brazen, to be very honest. He's always been a big supporter for the pro-Palestine movement. He has
Hmm.
been very much like not lower his own volume. I think that
Hmm.
there's a lot to respect for people in our community that could really go against the grain, and so yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of power to that. So I do have a lot of
Yeah.
respect for him. But yeah, I would love to have another dinner with him.
Yeah, no, I love it too. When someone comes on our little show, it's kind of like, I mean, they're not gaining a lot out of it except for, a good conversation, hopefully.
Mhm,
But I appreciate, and I think a lot of times these creators or artists, they remember what it's like to be be
mhm,
small
mhm.
and no one's heard of us and
Yes,
stuff. So I think they're willing to come. If you can get a hold of them, most of them are willing to come. It's
yes,
hard to get a hold of some people.
yes.
That's the only
Yeah,
problem.
you got Connie Chung on, which is pretty impressive. I was like, wow,
That was
that was a
well, pure luck, pure
yes.
luck on my part. Yeah, but yeah. So I'm the same way. If anyone's willing to come on my show, they're forever going to be a hero for me
Aw.
in my eyes. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that does it for our episode. Thanks to my guest Randy for coming on. Listen to the Banh Mi Chronicles wherever you get podcasts. Follow Randy at Chronicles, or on social media. You can read his Substack at substack.com/at Banh Mi Bites. And I'll type all this out because I know it's a mouthful
Mhm.
for everyone out there. But Randy, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure chatting.
Thank you so much, Curtis. I really appreciate it.
And I guess I'll see you in Chicago one of these days.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope so too. And also thanks for like being very patient with me with the unexpected power outages just
No.
happen out of nowhere, you know.
Don't worry. Shh, the audience doesn't know. The audience. They
Yes.
don't. But yeah, okay, everyone out there, thank you for listening to us ramble on about podcasting a little bit. You can follow us at Infatuasian Podcast on Instagram or Facebook. Write us an old-fashioned Gmail email if you want to write to us at infatuasianpodcast@gmail.com. So again, everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. And on behalf of Randy and myself, we hope that you're all happy, healthy, and
Abundant.
And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for listening. Bye, everyone.